Forget oil, forget territory. The most valuable and dangerous resource in the world is smaller than your fingertip. And it is why the United States and China are on a collision course for what many are calling the first true battle in the Mo. US-China tech rivalry. See, the vast majority of the world's most advanced microchips are made on one single island. An island that China considers a rogue province and is determined to reclaim. So what happens if the world's supply of these chips from TSMC and Taiwan just stops? The global economy wouldn't just slow down, it would implode. But the terrifying part? This is the one flashpoint that could ignite a catastrophic war between two superpowers. This isn't some far-off, distant future. This is the fragile reality of our modern world. At the center of it all is one company, on one island, holding the power to turn our hyper-connected world off, like a light switch. So, what exactly is this resource that's become more precious than oil? We're talking about semiconductors, or as you probably know them, microchips. For anyone wanting the Semiconductor War explained, it all starts here. If you're watching this on a phone, a laptop, or a smart TV, you're looking at the end product of a semiconductor. But their influence goes so much deeper than that. Think of a microchip as the brain of every electronic device on the planet. They are the invisible engine of the 21st century. Your car? It likely has hundreds, even thousands of them, controlling everything from the engine to the infotainment screen. Hospitals that save our lives? They run on equipment packed with semiconductors. The power grids that light our homes, the banks that manage our money, the servers that store our data, all of it powered by these tiny, intricate pieces of silicon. And here's the kicker. They power the military. A modern F-35 fighter jet is basically a flying supercomputer. Advanced missile systems, drone warfare, global surveillance networks, none of it works without the most advanced chips. For decades, we all took this for granted. Chips were just there. Then, the world got a brutal wake-up call. In 2021, car factories from Detroit to Wolfsburg shut down. Thousands of workers were sent home, not because of a lack of steel or rubber, but because of a single $1 chip missing from the supply chain. It was a stark demonstration, a terrifying vulnerability. When the supply of even basic chips is disrupted, the global economy shudders. Now, imagine that disruption wasn't about basic chips, but the most advanced ones. The chips that power our critical infrastructure. Our best technology, from AI to quantum computing. Imagine it wasn't a temporary snag, but a deliberate geopolitical act. That's the cliff we're standing on, because the one company that makes almost all of them sits in the most dangerous place on Earth. To understand how we got into this mess, we have to rewind. The story of the microchip doesn't start in Asia, but in California. In what became Silicon Valley, brilliant minds at companies like Fairchild and Intel invented the integrated circuit, laying the groundwork for the digital revolution. For a long time, the American model was simple. You design your own chips, and you build your own chips. Intel became a household name not just for designing processors, but for manufacturing them in massive high-tech factories called fabs. It was a symbol of American tech supremacy. But making chips is one of the most complex and expensive things humanity has ever attempted. We're talking about etching billions of transistors, just atoms wide, onto a sliver of silicon in a clean room 10,000 times cleaner than a hospital operating room. The cost to build a single, state-of-the-art fab? It skyrocketed from millions to billions, and now tens of billions of dollars. As costs ballooned, many American companies decided to focus on what they did best, designing the world's most sophisticated chips. They left the messy, expensive business of manufacturing to others, mostly in Asia, where it was cheaper. It made perfect economic sense, but it planted the seeds of a massive strategic weakness. This is where one man, Morris Chang, changes history. A brilliant engineer and a veteran of the American tech giant Texas Instruments, Chang was recruited by Taiwan's government in the 1980s to build its tech industry. He had a revolutionary idea. Instead of competing with giants like Intel by designing and building chips, his company would do just one thing: build chips for other companies. A pure-play foundry. His company wouldn't design a single chip of its own. It would simply be the best in the world at manufacturing everyone else's designs. In 1987, he founded the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. At the time, few saw the potential, but Chang's model was a masterstroke. While other companies split their focus, TSMC poured all of its energy into perfecting manufacturing. They became obsessed with Moore's Law, the idea that the number of transistors on a chip doubles about every 2 years. Decade after decade, TSMC got better, faster, and more advanced. They mastered the mind-bending physics of producing chips at microscopic scales. While others fell behind, TSMC surged ahead. Today, TSMC is an empire built on silicon. In the contract chip-making market, its global share is around 67%. But that number hides a terrifying reality. When it comes to the most advanced, cutting-edge chips, those smaller than 7 nanometers essential for AI and high-performance computing, TSMC's market share is over 90%. An entire island, smaller than West Virginia, had quietly become the single point of failure for the global economy. This incredible dominance by TSMC in Taiwan created a geopolitical triangle of tension, with Taiwan at the center and two superpowers, the United States and China, pulling it in opposite directions and fueling the semiconductor war. On one side, you've got the United States. For decades, America has been the undisputed leader in chip design. Companies like Apple, Nvidia, and Qualcomm are the architects of the digital world. But they're architects without a workshop. They outsourced the manufacturing. In doing so, they handed the keys to their kingdom to TSMC, the U.S. military, the U.S. economy, the future of American tech. It all became critically dependent on an island just 100 miles off the coast of its main rival. This is now America's greatest strategic vulnerability. On the other side, there's China. For 40 years, China became the world's factory, assembling most of the world's electronics. But it's an assembly powerhouse with a foreign heart. It can design some of its own chips, but it has to import the most advanced ones, the brains, from abroad, mostly from Taiwan. China spends as much money importing microchips as it does importing oil. For a nation that wants to be the world's dominant technological and military power, this is an intolerable weakness. This tension is supercharged by politics. The Chinese Communist Party views Taiwan as a breakaway province that must be reunified with the mainland, by force if necessary. In fact, Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered his military to be ready to invade the island by 2027. For years, Taiwan's chip dominance was seen as its ultimate protection, a silicon shield. The logic was simple. An invasion of Taiwan would be so catastrophically disruptive to the global economy that nobody, not even China, would dare risk it. An attack would vaporize trillions, cripple China's own industry. This mutual dependence was supposed to keep Taiwan safe. But now, that shield looks less like a defense and more like a target. If you're still watching, you now understand more about this hidden war than most people on the planet. Make sure you stay until the end, because I'm about to explain how that silicon shield might be the very thing that triggers a full-blown TSMC Taiwan conflict. This invisible war for tech supremacy is already happening, with moves and countermoves reshaping the global balance of power. The outcome will define the next century, and it's all happening faster than most of us realize. If you want to understand the hidden forces driving our world, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. The cold piece of the silicon shield started to crack in the late 2010s. The United States, finally waking up to its profound vulnerability, went on the offensive. This was the start of the modern U.S.-China chip war. A semiconductor war fought not with soldiers, but with export controls, blacklists, and sanctions. The first big move was a series of U.S. export controls aimed squarely at China's tech sector. The goal was precise and brutal: cut off China's access to advanced chips, and more importantly, the tools needed to make them. This included targeting the crown jewel of chip making, extreme ultraviolet, or EUV, lithography machines. These bus-sized machines, made by a single Dutch company, ASML, are the only things in the world that can print the patterns for the most advanced chips. The US successfully pressured the Dutch government to block their sale to China. The move effectively kneecapped Beijing's ability to catch up. Then came the Chips and Science Act. Realizing it couldn't rely on Taiwan forever, the US government committed over $52 billion to convince companies to build advanced chip factories on American soil. The message was clear: America was building its own lifeboat. As part of this, TSMC was persuaded to build a massive new plant in Arizona. But the project has been a harsh reality check. Plagued by delays and soaring costs, the facility has faced significant challenges. While its first fab is now in production, the struggles highlight a difficult truth. You can't just move this complex ecosystem. Faced with a campaign to strangle its technological future, China responded with overwhelming force. Beijing has unleashed a fire hose of state funding, pledging hundreds of billions to build a self-sufficient domestic semiconductor industry. Initiatives like Made in China 2025 aim to break free from Western choke points, with major cities setting aggressive goals. And while China still lags years behind, its progress is shocking. Companies like SMIC and Huawei have produced surprisingly advanced chips with older equipment. It's a testament to their sheer determination. Some believe the US squeeze has only forced China to move faster. And this is where things get dangerous, because what started as a trade dispute is now looking more and more like the spark for World War III. Stay with me. Alongside this, China has ramped up its military pressure on Taiwan. Warplanes now routinely cross the median line in the Taiwan Strait, and massive military exercises simulate a full-scale blockade of the island. A Chinese blockade, which wouldn't even require an invasion, would halt trade and trigger a global crisis. Estimates from the Rhodium Group suggest a blockade could wipe more than $2 trillion from global GDP in the first year alone. The invisible war is now out in the open. A technological struggle that has set the stage for a terrifying question. What happens when one side decides the only way to win is to make the war very, very real? If you've made it this far, you now know more about the chip war than 99% of people. But the most dangerous part is still ahead. We are now in the most dangerous phase of this fight. The logic of Taiwan's silicon shield is being turned on its head. U.S. policies meant to secure America's chip supply are creating a terrifying incentive for Beijing. A closing window of opportunity. A now or never moment. Seize Taiwan before the West can build its own supply lines. turning the Pai chip war 2020 from a cold conflict into a hot one. The scenarios for what could happen next are all grim. A direct war over Taiwan would be a global cataclysm. Imagine a loved one needing emergency surgery, but the hospital can't get the specific chip required for their life-saving equipment. It's sitting on a cargo ship, indefinitely, because of a blockade around Taiwan. That's the kind of brutal, real-world consequence we're talking about. War games simulating a Taiwan invasion scenario consistently show horrific casualties for all sides. China, Taiwan, the US and its allies. The economic fallout would be immediate and total. The global supply of advanced chips would go to zero, not a recession, a collapse, a global economic implosion. And that $2 trillion estimate for a blockade? The Rhodium Group calls that a conservative floor. Even short of a hot war, we are hurtling towards a great decoupling, a technological iron curtain falling between China and the West. In this future, two separate, incompatible tech ecosystems emerge. One, centered around the US and its allies, with new supply chains built at enormous cost. The other, centered around China, relentlessly chasing self-sufficiency and creating its own standards. A new Cold War, fought not with nukes, but with patents and standards. Neither path is easy. For the US, reshoring decades of manufacturing is proving incredibly expensive and slow. TSMC itself has said that building and operating a fab in the US can cost significantly more than in Taiwan. For China, the challenge is even greater. Despite pouring hundreds of billions into the effort, they remain years, maybe a decade or more, behind the cutting edge. Without access to Western tools, catching up is a monumental task. They are trapped in a race against time, trying to innovate faster than the West can decouple. We've built our entire modern civilization on a foundation of silicon, a foundation located in the epicenter of the world's most dangerous rivalry. The brilliant supply chain that gave us the digital age has become our greatest vulnerability. A single point of failure, one that could shatter the world order. The chip war isn't coming. It's here. It's being fought in quiet labs, tense boardrooms, and government halls. But the decisions being made in those places today, driven by fear and ambition, could determine whether this conflict spills out from the invisible world of economics into the brutal reality of war. The world is holding its breath, balanced on the edge of a microchip. The question is no longer if. This critical supply chain will be used as a weapon, but when, how, and what happens to all of us when it finally breaks? Do you think the US can secure chip independence before China makes its move? Or will Beijing gamble on war? Let me know what you think in the comments.